What's up, guys? Welcome to Go Motoring YouTube channel. This is going to be the second video of a series of what you need to know videos that I'm going to be making on several BMW Z cars. In today's video, I will tell you what you need to know about the BMW Z3. Let's begin by telling you how the BMW Z3 came to be. Following the success of the Mazda Miata, which was released in 1990, the German manufacturers wanted to get into the Roadster market. And as I mentioned in my previous video, BMW started producing the BMW Z1 around the same time that the Miata came out. But the Z1 was a limited production vehicle and it was expensive. Therefore, BMW needed to make a mass-produced BMW Z model, and that model was the BMW Z3. The development of the BMW Z3 started in 1991, which coincided with when the production of the BMW Z1 stopped. And the BMW Z3 was first revealed to the world in the James Bond movie GoldenEye, which ended up setting the BMW era in James Bond movies. The BMW Z3 that was shown in GoldenEye was then followed by the BMW 7 Series, the 750iL, the E38, and also the BMW motorcycle R1200C, Tomorrow Never Dies, and then also by the BMW Z8, which was in the movie The World Is Not Enough. And I'm actually going to do I'm going to do a What You Need to Know video of the BMW Z8 as well. But the BMW Z3 was produced from 1995 as a 1996 model year until 2002. And this particular car was actually produced in South Carolina. And it was a huge sales success for BMW. So let's talk about the models and the engines. Throughout its 6-year production cycle, the Z3 was constantly updated with different model names and engines. The horsepower ranged from 138 horsepower, which was in the 1.9 liter 4-cylinder engine, to 315 horsepower, which some of the end models came equipped with. So to kind of give you the rundown of the different models, and engine outputs throughout this 6-year life cycle, from 1996 to 1998. The entry-level model was the 1.9 Roadster. That's the one that came equipped with a 4-cylinder engine producing 138 horsepower and 133 pound-foot of torque. It went 0 to 60 in 8.1 seconds and did the quarter mile in 16.1 seconds. And it also weighed slightly less than 2,700 pounds at 2,690. In 1999, the entry-level model, the 1.9 Roadster, was replaced by the 2.3 Roadster, and the 4-cylinder engine that came equipped in the 1.9 Roadster was replaced by a 2.5 liter, 170 horsepower inline 6 engine, and that ended up being sort of the entry-level base engine model starting in 1999. And then also in 1999, the rear fenders were made wider to accommodate a wider rear track. Then in 2001 and 2002, the 2.3 Roadster was again changed to 2.5 Roadster. And that, I think, primarily was done to match the fact that the inline 6 that came equipped in that model was a 2.5 liter. And then in 2001, the horsepower was also increased to 184 horsepower. There was also a sporty version that was released starting in 1997. So after that first year, BMW introduced a 2.8 Roadster, and that one came equipped with a 6-cylinder engine, BMW inline 6 engine, producing 189 horsepower, and it also had a wider track and larger brakes than the entry-level 1.9 model, or 1.9 Roadster. The 0 to 60 in the 2.8 Roadster was took about 6.4 seconds, and the quarter mile was in was 14.9 seconds, and the torque was significantly higher at 203 pound-foot of torque. The weight obviously increased a little bit due to there being a 6-cylinder engine, and it was a little bit less than 2,900 pounds at 2,870. And then in 1999, the 2.8 Roadster, the power increased to 193 horsepower. And then that sporty version in 2001 and 2002 was again replaced by another model named the 3.0i Roadster. And to kind of reflect that it had then become equipped with a 3-liter inline-6 engine producing 225 horsepower. And then in 1998 and 1999, BMW also released the M versions, the M Roadster of the BMW Z3. And that one had 240 horsepower, and it came equipped with a 3.2-liter inline-6 engine. That was the same one that was found in the E36 M3. It also had upgraded suspension and brakes. As I mentioned, 0 to 60 was 5.4 seconds, and a quarter mile was in 14 seconds. The torque was 236 pound-foot of torque, and again, it weighed a little bit more than the other versions, probably at 3,070 pounds. And then in 2001 and 2002, the horsepower was again boosted in the M version to 315. So again, lots of different models, lots of different engines. It's one of these cars that was effectively always getting tweaks during its 6-year production cycle, and by the time that the production ended of the Z3, it kind of probably started hitting a sweet spot in terms of the power options that were available. Let's talk about the suspension. To keep the price low, the BMW Z3 shared many parts with the BMW E36 3 Series. In fact, the chassis number for the Roadsters is the E36/7 for the Roadster, or the E36/8 for the Coupe. That's a little bit atypical. Most of the time, like the Z4, the chassis is the E85. It's not, sharing it with the E46/something else. So I think that kind of almost may be indicative of the fact that it was sharing a lot of the parts with the BMW 3 Series. But sort of the one area that was heavily criticized, with the Z3 was the suspension, and specifically, the front suspension was shared with the BMW E36 3 Series. It was the McPherson strut front suspension, and that was fine. That worked well. But the rear suspension was actually shared with the BMW E30, so the 3 Series. So the previous generation 3 Series, which was a semi-trailing arm rear suspension, and not the multi-link suspension, which was in the Z1 and the BMW E36 3 Series. And as a result of that, many people complained about the rear suspension, saying that the front of the car was not in sync with the rear of the car. And as a result, the car didn't feel as stable and planted in corners, because it effectively had the suspension from, the front suspension was from a newer 3 Series, and the rear suspension was from the older 3 Series, and that probably was the biggest criticism that this particular car received. The other area of criticism this car had, were especially with the early models, was with the lack of power. With that 1.9 Roadster, producing 138 horsepower, taking 8 seconds to get 0 to 60. So in addition to being criticized for the suspension, some of those early models were also criticized for not being that powerful. Let's talk about the looks of this car. This is a gorgeous car. It was designed by Joji Nagashima, and he ended up completing the design of this car in the mid-1990s, in mid-1992. So it was basically 39 months before production that the design of this car was finalized. And whenever you're looking at the design of a vehicle, it's really important to understand the context of the design and how the you know how the design came to be. Okay, in the 80s, as you all know, most of the cars were very boxy, right? I mean, that was sort of the look in the 1980s, is that the cars were boxy. And if you look at modern cars, a lot of them, they look very aerodynamic. They have very smooth lines, flowy lines, etc. And so if you look at the design of the BMW Z3, you can almost see how the design of the car is morphing, right? It's sort of morphing from this boxy look of the 1980s type vehicles, and it's sort of starting to take shape of how the cars would look in the 1990s and the 2000s. They would have soft lines. So even though this the Z3 has many soft lines, there's also straight lines. Like if you look at the rear of the car, if you look at the trunk, there's a straight line that comes across, and then it sort of curves out with those fenders. And I think the car looks excellent. It looks awesome. It's a car that is always going to look good, regardless of how much time passes. It's got the perfect proportions, and it's just a gorgeous looking car, especially with this blue paint that you see in this video. The paint just looks awesome, and that's exactly the same paint that you saw in the movie GoldenEye. So if I were in the market for the BMW Z3, I'd certainly want to get one that comes equipped with this paint. But all in all, it's a great looking car from the outside. On the inside, the interior looks fine, especially when you take into account that this car was designed, in the early 90s and was produced in the mid 90s. It looks like a pretty simple interior, but that's sort of what you want, right? It kind of contributes to this car being very much an analog BMW, an analog vehicle. And when you look at this vehicle inside, it really has that feel of not having too many fancy things inside, just everything that you would need to have fun driving the car. So looks wise, I think both interior and exterior, the car looks great, and it's certainly a work of art reflecting the time period within which it was designed, and really reflecting that transition of going away from the boxy look of cars and sort of going more towards the aerodynamic look of the cars with softer lines. This BMW Z3 design perfectly sort of bridges that gap and kind of shows you where the car came from design-wise, like where the influence was, from its predecessors, and then also where the design was going. So let me conclude this what you need to know video about the driving characteristics of this car. Obviously, I didn't drive the car that you see in the video. It's in the museum. But I have driven a BMW Z3 many years ago, and I was almost reluctant to talk about its driving characteristics in this video, because it really was a long time ago. I mean, it may be at least 16, 17 years since I drove that one car, and as a result, it's been a long time. I don't remember too much in terms of the details, from that drive. But what I do remember is that the one that I drove was the 1.9 Roadster, the one with the 4-cylinder engine, and at the time I remember kind of almost being surprised at the lack of power that the car had. the car certainly looked like a sports car. It looked pretty fast. But then, just driving it on the back roads, I just kind of felt like there was something missing, right? And what was missing, obviously, was the power. Now, it's also worth noting that when I test drove that car, there were a lot of cars still on the road that had that analog feel to them, right? So some of the things that we long for in cars now, such as really the analog feel, the single purpose feel of a car, hydraulic steering, direct connection to the road, not being insulated from the driving experience, all those things that we love and miss when we drive modern day cars. Back when I test drove this BMW Z3, there were plenty of cars that still had those characteristics. So probably when I test drove the BMW Z3, some of the things that I would probably love about the car now, again, the hydraulic steering, the simpleness of the car, the lightweight, at the time when I was test driving it, it probably wasn't as memorable as it would be now. So again, that was my experience test driving the BMW Z3. Again, it was the 4-cylinder model, so it was kind of the entry-level one. I'm sure that the models that came equipped with the 6-cylinder engine would have been a lot more fun to drive. And but that was my experience with it. I will certainly try to find a BMW Z3 and do a proper test drive review of it for you all on this channel. But that was that as of right now, the experience that I just shared with you is the one that I've had with the BMW Z3. So that's it for this What You Need to Know video about the BMW Z3. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment below, subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for more videos. I'm going to be following this video up with a video about the BMW Z3 Coupe. Thanks, guys.